I do this all the time, Chris, and it rained every day here this weekend, so I had a lot of downtime. So I found myself, I'll go back on YouTube and go back to, for some reason, I choose the 1970s all the time and watch old college football broadcasts from the 1970s. And I was watching the first ever Hall of Fame game over the weekend. And we used to put up graphics, like a full screen graphic that says, "We apologize, we're having technical difficulties with the broadcast." They kept the audio going of the first ever Hall of Fame game here in Birmingham on Mislu television. But they had a graphic up. They were having camera issues, and you could still hear the game, but you were just looking at a full screen. So we were going to do that with you too, Chris. We were going to put up, sorry, technical difficulties.
Yeah, Mislu, boy, that's something. I haven't heard that name in 40 plus years.
Yep, that was back in the day.
I'm
older than you, Chris, I think. Yes.
Hey, so Chris, random, but we were talking Tennessee football in our 40 and 40 today, and we were talking specifically Josh Heupel. He's won 30 games over his last 3 years. You probably know the story more than we do, the backstory between the bad beef with his alma mater, Oklahoma. But we were talking about if Venables did struggle and had a 5-7, there's a possibility Oklahoma would make a change. Is there any world that you think Josh Heupel would leave Tennessee and go back to Oklahoma?
I don't think so. I think, Josh is pretty private guy. He didn't talk a lot about that type thing, but I think there's a clear disconnect between he and his alma mater. Now that said, he's still very close to a lot of the guys he played with there. In fact, several of them were there last year, and some of them on the Tennessee sideline. So he still has a real deep appreciation and connection with a lot of the guys he played with. I don't know that, though, he would go back there to be head coach. I think you never say never, right? You look at some of the things around college sports that have happened. I mean, would you have ever thought Bobby Petrino would be back at Arkansas?
No, not at all.
That's a good point.
So at one point, Gary Patterson was coaching at Texas and Baylor.
Yep.
So I've just learned to never say never. Based on what I know, I don't think that's very likely at all.
Well, I always think, and we do this, not you specifically, but in the media, we'll always say when a guy's alma mater opens up, we'll always pencil his name in. They are not always Kirby Smart stories. Mike Shula here at Alabama. Some of these, sometimes you don't want to go back and coach at your old school because it can ruin your college years and your memories and your chance to go back, right?
Well, it's got to be. And sometimes when you go back, the regime is so different. The place might be the same, but the people there are different. That it just doesn't work. I mean, Scott Frost is another great example of what you're talking about. It was just a disaster when he went back to Nebraska. I don't know that it was all on Scott, but it's just the fit's not what it was before. I always go back to Steve Spurrier, when he was getting back into it after it didn't work for him in the NFL, and Florida needed a coach, and there was some momentum, as you might expect, for him to go back to Florida. The president there, though, at the time, and I don't know if it was Foley was still. I guess Foley was still there, but said, hey, they wanted him to go through the same process that any coach would, resume, interview, and I think Spurrier was basically saying, hey, my resume's out there in your hallway.
Yeah,
all those SEC trophies and the national championship trophy. So again, the people are typically different. When you go back now, he had a huge amount of success when he went the first time. And which we've seen that. Bill Snyder went back to K-State for a second time and had some success. But no, it's not always the natural fit that a lot of people think it's going to be. Kirby was an obvious slam dunk for Georgia at that point. And, of course, it couldn't have turned out better for the Dogs. But, yes, you're absolutely right, man. You just never say this is a guarantee, a slam dunk.
Chris Lewis with us, ESPN College Football Insider. He's on the Alexander Shinora Trial Attorneys Hotline. The Shinora Hotline is where you find Chris Lowe. From Birmingham, Alabama, looking to Knoxville, after the way he handled the Nico situation, Chris, it seemed like in spite of getting blown out in the playoffs, whatever the case might be, Josh Heupel had to be pretty close to a 100% approval rating by his fan base because he reacted the way I think every fan wanted to react to that. A, do you believe that to be the case? I mean, was he close to as close to 100% as you could probably get as a college football coach? But B, how long does that goodwill normally last in a place like Knoxville, Tennessee?
Well, I mean, it lasts until they can't throw the football in the second half, and they're 0 for 7 on third down, and the pass game just stinks. And then it's like, well, they should have worked harder to patch things up with Nico Iamaleava. You guys know how it works in the SEC. But no, I think at the time, Josh did what he had to do. He didn't have much of a decision, really. I mean, it would have been much different had the kid gone to practice that Friday, gone to the spring game the next day, and then sat out on Sunday with the collective and whomever and said, hey, let's work this out. If we can't work it out, I'm leaving. Maybe Tennessee meets him halfway, maybe they don't. But when you ghost everybody in the program, your teammates, your coaches, your coach trying to get in touch with you that whole day, Heupel didn't answer his calls, there's no choice. I mean, you bring him back into the locker room as your quarterback, you give him another $500,000 or whatever, $1 million, and you bring him back in your locker room, you lose your whole locker room. So I don't think Josh had any choice. He did what I think every coach would have done, but memories are short in the SEC. And if they don't play well at the quarterback position and struggle on offense, there'll be some people saying, well, Tennessee, Josh Heupel should have been a little bit more forward thinking. They shouldn't have let it get to that point. I don't know that I would not be saying that. I think, again, in this era, you gotta protect your locker room. You really do. And even if you've got a quarterback you think is talented, and he is very talented, he didn't have a great year last year. He was okay, but I think he will be or would have been a lot better this year in his second year as a starter. And I think he'll be pretty good at UCLA. I don't know that they have the talent around Nico to just where he's going to be lights out, but it's always going to be wait and see in the league. And at that position, more than any other, if you don't play pretty well at the quarterback position, certainly if you are throwing the football to the other team, then you're going to have issues. And I think that's where we just don't know yet. Joey Aguilar has put up good numbers, but he has thrown the ball to the other team a lot during his career. Merklinger hasn't thrown any passes that were meaningful in any games. And the other kid, McIntyre, is a true freshman. So we'll find out. And I think it's, again, they're going to put a lot of pressure on their defense, just like they did last year, probably even more so, if they're going to be a playoff team.
Okay, give me a surprise potential playoff team out of the SEC.
I'm gonna cop out on you guys. I can't give you one. I would go. LSU to me is not really a surprise. I think they're going to be really good.
Okay, if I did second tier SEC, so let's go Auburn, let's go Oklahoma.
Yeah, I was going to say Auburn would be I think Auburn will be much improved. I don't know that they can get to 10 wins, or even maybe. I don't know that 9 gets you in a 12. When we go to 16, 9 will definitely get you in. But I don't know that 9 gets you in a 12-team format. And I do think Auburn could get to 9. I don't see them getting to 10, but I do think they'll be one of the more improved teams in the conference. South Carolina is another one. They were right there on the cusp last year. And they have a chance, I think, to be really good with Sellers because, again, he's that guy at the position that means the most. You just can't get that guy on the ground. I think he will be a more polished passer in his second year as a starter. So to me, South Carolina has a lot of really good young talent, not just Sellers and not just the pass rusher Stewart, but up front in the offensive line. They're another team. And I think a lot of people have written Ole Miss off because they lost some really good players on defense. They lost their quarterback. But I bet you they'll be pretty good again this year too. So I think the league will be a lot like it was last year. It sort of cannibalized itself a little bit. And you saw that more so than ever before. I don't know if you guys agree, but I thought the league had gotten top heavy from basically 15 until last year. It was the same teams. It was Georgia, Alabama, Georgia. LSU had that great year, and 19. But you didn't really have that second-tier teams that you felt like would or could win on any Saturday. Last year, you saw it all over the league. Oklahoma beats Alabama. They knock Alabama out. Kentucky beats Ole Miss. That loss essentially knocks Ole Miss out. Tennessee loses to Arkansas. Now, Tennessee still got in, but Arkansas beat them. But over and over again, you saw some of those type games, and I think the league was much more bunched up from, say, 1 to 9 or 10. You know, Vandy beats Alabama for the first time since the Reagan administration. I'm joking, obviously, but
I don't think you're wrong.
I don't think you're wrong.
Yeah, you weren't wrong about that.
I think you're right. I think it was
yeah.
the Reagan administration. Yeah.
So, but there were those types of games last year that we haven't seen as much of in the SEC. And the knock on SEC, fair or unfair, was it was top heavy. You had a couple of teams carrying the banner for everybody else in the league, and I thought last year it wasn't. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? I just thought it was more balanced, and I think this year you'll see more of the same.
Yeah. With that in mind, coming out of the meetings in Destin, if and you know this, you talk to the coaches all the time. What is the football coaches, what is their desire for the future college football playoffs? Do they want the 5-11? Do they want a computer coming up with the rankings? What is their desire, Chris?
Number one, I don't think they all trust the committee to really delve into what the grind is like in the SEC. I don't think they feel like, again, fair or unfair, that there's enough benefit given to teams in the SEC that have to play an SEC schedule. I do think they'd like to see maybe everything not be quite as subjective. I mean, I find it funny. I know Roy Kramer does too, that here we are in 2025 and everybody's cursing the committee when they were cursing the metrics and the polls and the formulas of the BCS back during the day. And I'm starting to hear some, hey, maybe we go back to more of a BCS type formula to pick the teams. I don't know that we'll ever get to fully just a formula. And of course, those included some human polls. But no, I don't think they really fully trust the committee. The other thing, I don't think they're on board with a ninth conference game unless there's some assurances. You know, I was talking to Kirby and a couple of other coaches after the meetings, and they said, hey, non-conference games means what, 8 more losses in the league? If you're going to be judged on how many you lose, and if you're an SEC coach, do you want to go to a ninth conference game? The third thing is, yes, I think if it is a 4-4-2-2-2 or 5 automatic qualifiers, the 5 being the conference champions, and 11 at large, the coaches I've talked with, and I haven't talked to every coach, but more than half would favor that format, 11 at-large bids. Because if you look at it last year, I think I went back and looked, Ole Miss would have also gotten in, South Carolina would have gotten in, and Alabama would have gotten in last year. So you'd had, 6 SEC teams. And if it's just 4 automatics, then maybe you're potentially costing yourself some spots. I think the big thing, most of the angst right now among coaches, let's be honest here, coaches don't make the decisions. The president's the one, when you get back to in the realm of how many conference games you're going to play. Well, if you play a ninth conference game, what's that mean? That means more money. And Big Ten has passed the SEC a little bit in payout. So are the presidents going to turn down more money? I don't know. But I think most of the angst among coaches is give us a clearer picture, more clarity of what the format, what the method is going to be going forward in 26 when I'm almost positive it will be 16 teams, what the format's going to be to pick the 16 teams. Is it going to be purely a committee again? Is there going to be a mix? They want a clearer picture of what that's going to look like.
I bet it was the Reagan administration the last time they turned down more money, too.
Yeah. We all know the answer to that.
Yeah, that's right.
100%.
Hey, before you go, we joked about it on the show. When you just say the phrase house settlement, it sounds like the most boring topic in the world, but it is transformational for college sports. We get all of that. There are 16 SEC schools. Have you talked to an athletics director in the SEC that says we are not ready for this? This could damage our program. Is there a fear of that among some ADs?
Now, I haven't talked to anybody that said it, but it's like a coach coming out of spring practice. Have you ever heard a coach come out of spring practice and say, we're just not ready. We're in trouble.
We're going to suck. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to stink. Remember Spurrier a few years ago did a parody on that?
Yeah.
He said, receivers can't catch the ball. Defensive backs on the ground the whole day. And he starts, have you ever heard a coach say that? Same way with ADs. They're not going to say that. No AD ever gets turned down in the coach search, right?
Yeah.
Ever. But they're not going to say it. I think they're hopeful, as Charlie Baker said, that it at least is a pathway to some semblance of stability in college sports. But it's a start. I tell my dad's asked me about it, folks in my neighborhood, if I go to the Weigels to get gas. And my response to them is the same thing I'll tell you guys. It's a start. It is hardly the end. It is a start. And does it give the sport a chance to get out of some of this chaos? I think it does. But boy, I think the thing that all coaches and all administrators I've talked to have asked, maybe behind the scenes, is over and above the $20.5 million that's going to go straight from schools to athletes, what's NIL going to look like now that we have the College Sports Commission? What's enforcement going to look like now that they're enforcing it? And here's the big question. You guys are all smarter than me. What is the definition of fair market value?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Whatever you can get.
So I brought this up at the start of the show. What was Cam Newton's fair market value coming out of Blinn Community College? But it was low coming out of Blinn, but you let him play a season at Auburn, and, I mean, he'd be a $10 million quarterback easy today.
What was Tim Tebow's fair market value in Florida?
Yeah.
Well, what would Mike Shula have paid if he could have paid to get him to Tuscaloosa to save his job?
Coming out of Nice High School, I mean, he could have gotten a ton of money, and it was
Joe
worth every
Burrow
dime.
transfers from Ohio State. He can't get on the field at Ohio State, and he absolutely lights out that year at LSU. What would his? I mean,
yeah.
So again, I don't know. I can't answer that. I know there's a formula. Deloitte, the clearinghouse, they're going to do it. The College Sports Commission is over enforcement. That's the other thing I would remind fans is really the NCAA's role now when it comes to enforcing rules. About the only thing they're going to enforce if there's some type of egregious fraud, academic fraud. But as far as benefits and money and NIL payments, that's now the College Sports Commission's wheelhouse. They're going to be over that. And you guys know as well as I do, when you're keeping score and the money that's available now, there are always going to be people looking for end arounds.
Yep.
How do we get around this? How can we pay some guy to come to the largest dealership in Knoxville or Birmingham or wherever, and how can we pay him $500,000 an appearance to take pictures? And is that fair market value? I don't know, but there are going to be people looking for ways to do that, and I don't think we're going to see. Most schools will pay $15 million for football, 15 million of the 20.5. I still think we're going to see rosters 35, 30, maybe approaching 40 million. They'll figure out ways to supplement the 20.5.
You know Tom Mars, so next time you see him, tell him I've already written his opening statement. The first case he gets against Deloitte is, how much are we paying Deloitte? Now, how is that the fair market value? How did you come up with that figure?
Right. Yeah.
And case closed. We rest our case.
Yes.
Well, hey, why were we not smart enough? All four of us. Why were we not smart enough to be attorneys? To be lawyers.
I know.
They're lining up right now, guys.
Yep.
They are lining up to challenge what still is sort of an imaginary cap with the 20.5, 15, whatever it is for football. There are going to be a lot of lawsuits, Title IX lawsuits, and just the kind of lawsuits you guys are talking about right now.
To my defense, I went to Jacksonville State. There was no law school at Jacksonville State, so I
wasn't smart enough. I could have never passed.
There was that too. Yeah.
By the way, Mars Law Firm, office in Northwest Arkansas, office in Atlanta, Georgia. They cover all the SEC.
It's got the whole footprint.
All the SEC right there.
He is Chris Lowe at CeeLo ESPN. Chris, it is always a pleasure to talk with you. We thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, same here, guys. Always good to catch up.